Start a timer if we're doing a test one.
Okay, so how do you
Got it.
Oh. All right, strategic and oh crap, I already I messed up. Oh. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. Hold on. I don't know what I just did. Okay. Okay. All right. Strategic Ambiguity by Noah Sanders, Nia Harris, Emma Davis, Max Steiner, and Macy O'Mary. Our main question are there advantages of using the term hookup, and what might be the advantages of using the term? The key words to look out for is hookup, gender, sexuality, hegemonic masculinity, and emphasize femininity. For our first key point is casual sex becoming the new normal. And it's a normative among college students. It gives in the text that many juniors and seniors offered their experiences as well as examination of their decisions and how their attitudes have changed. I feel like looking more at how attitudes have changed about it, especially if, say, you're like neighbors like in the dorm room and you see them one day and oh, you guys are friends, but then it turns into like, a hookup, and then the next day like everything becomes weird from that point. And I feel like that emphasizes on how attitudes change between, two friends, and then you hook up and then everything becomes weird. And that kind of leads into a wide spectrum of what hooking up could really mean. Many people didn't know how to define hookups, whether or not it could be in the same definition as sex or not. And with the text, it explained that a hookup is a form of range of many things like kissing, sex, sexual activity, etc. I look at it as a whole line, and then you start like from like flirting maybe, and like kissing and making out, and then if you decide to lead to sex or oral sex, then that's on a whole nother level. Like that's on a big spectrum. And that kind of leads into the level of intimacy of hooking up with dating apps and social media in the way. Um, for the intimacy, it's kind of changed. Not much people care about having a relationship prior to hooking up and finding someone to have sex with. The apps, there's a lot of apps I can name off, including like Tinder, Snapchat, Instagram. You can slide into DMs, and many other dating apps, maybe like Christian Mingle for St. Ambrose, even though this is a Catholic school and not many people probably have sex off that, but that's probably a good way as well for the social media. And for my quote, I put, this literature offers a nuance and complex of social sexual interactions. Hookups are simultaneously affecting and being affected by traditional historic patterns and of intimate partnering. And to understand that a little bit more, I put this picture, even though it doesn't have anything to do with sex, it just shows throughout like decades and centuries ago, like how women originally dressed in full gowns, like you can't see anything, and like throughout the centuries, like dresses got shorter, women started getting more freedom on what they can wear. And I feel like that ties into sex a little bit, because back then sex was really looked down upon, but then like coming up during like I want to say 1970s, it's breaking that historic pattern of looking down of it, when now it's more like appreciating your body and you can do whatever you like.
So for the activity, go ahead and get out a piece of paper and write down the characteristics that you think makes a good, successful person. And then pause whatever you need to do. And then the next thing to do is write whether each characteristic is predominantly masculine or predominantly feminine. After you write down the like some questions to think about was, did you list more masculine or feminine characteristics? What does that show about the assumptions of gender roles in society? How do your answers connect with the different ideas of strategic ambiguity in both women and men? And how have your opinions changed after this activity and why?
So the protection of hegemonic masculinity, women doing the work in a hookup. So when we think about a hookup nowadays, it's more about the man getting the pleasure done when it comes like either oral sex or like completing sex. It's usually when a man orgasms. So it's a lot the word is more wrapped around the man in a sense, which goes back to hegemonic masculinity. And then so privileging the man's desire over their own, that was taken straight from the text. When it talked about how women were more focused on just pleasuring the man and not worry about their own, which is unfair to themselves and just adding again more to the hegemonic masculinity. And they're also ignoring their right to sexual pleasure. This creates a pleasure gap that can cause a problem with women's ideas of themselves and their identity.
So with that video, it talks about exactly what Max's slide hit upon. In that instance, they were talking about oral sex and how DJ Khaled refuses to reciprocate that. And it just shows, again, the fact that women are doing the work in a hookup. And DJ Khaled is quoted saying, like, he's the king or whatever. So, like, he's privileging the man's desires over his wife's, and he's ignoring her right to sexual pleasure. So it was just a good demonstration of that. And with this question, how is what we learned during our what counts as sex discussion similar to hegemonic masculinity? The answer would be like with oral sex, at least, you know, a woman and a man could have like different opinions on that. Just the fact that a woman may not classify that as sex, but a man might, to appear more masculine to his peers.
Going more into that, we got be a man. So when going into a hookup, women do not want to be labeled as a slut to their peers, and kind of using the term hookup lessens the ideas that are given out to other people, makes it seem like it's not as more like the term slut. And so also when it comes to a man, they want to impress their friends and they want to be seen as more manly to their friends and make it seem like they are, going around and doing stuff. And there's also this big assumption that college men should be sexually active and it should be going around and going with all these different people, when really they are just being like they're forced in their brain and wired that way due to social concepts.
True or false? Men in today's society feel pressure to achieve appropriate masculinity. The answer to this would be true. Like Max said, they feel pressured to be a true man, and the way to do this is to basically go around sleeping with women to appear as more manly and like you're a player, and hopefully gain the respect of your peers.
So this is just a video. Okay.
You can just give a rundown of it.
So it's just a video that puts the terms homogenic masculinity versus emphasized femininity in simpler terms for kids and teenagers to better understand how it affects society and the views we have on sexual activity.
Emphasized femininity is often a reaction to hegemonic masculinity. It's the idea that men's needs and desires are more important than women's, and that women should conform to men's needs. Hookups are often defined as whether a man is pleasured or not, whether or not the woman is. Sexual ambiguity is used ultimately as a way to avoid the term slut for women. Women often use ambiguity as a way to protect their social image, whereas men use it to raise their social image. How can emphasized femininity in sexual relations corroborate with society's idea of a woman's role in everyday life? Discuss it with your groups. There are many opinions that can answer this question. Society's idea of a woman's role is subordinate to a man's. Similar to how men's sexual pleasures and desires are seen as more important than women's, females' everyday needs and roles are seen as more submissive than males. How can emphasized femininity in sexual relations corroborate with society's idea of a woman's role in everyday life?
So some of the review questions, go ahead and pause to make your answers, and then the answers will be at the end. What is the correct general use of strategic ambiguity for each gender? Males use strategic ambiguity to hide their amount of sexual activity, while females use strategic ambiguity to display their amount of sexual activity. Males use strategic ambiguity to display their amount of sexual activity, while females use strategic ambiguity to hide their amount of sexual activity. Both males and females use strategic ambiguity to hide their amount of sexual activity, or both males and females use strategic ambiguity to display their amount of sexual activity. What is true about strategic ambiguity? It is a way for men and women to strategize how to hook up more. It is a statistical strategy to measure the amount of hookups that occur. It is used to vaguely describe one's sexual activity. It has nothing to do with hookup culture or casual sex. What is not a reason as to how homogenic masculinity is protected? Women are vague about their sexual activity due to fear of having a reputation as a slut. College men are expected to be more sexually active. There's a desire to be labeled as a real man. or higher academic success correlated with higher sexual activity. Which of the following isn't true? Women are judged more harshly about their sexual activity compared to men. There are no societal pressures that affect the sexual activity of women or men. In most sexual activity, the pleasure is focused on men instead of women, or strategic ambiguity is closely associated with the increase of hookups and casual sex. What is the criteria you think assess the term casual sex? So the answers for number 1 is B. Males tend to be more pressured to have sex, so they use vague terms to exaggerate, while women tend to be judged more for how much they have sex, so they use vague terms to hide it. And then number 2 is C. Strategic ambiguity is cleverly avoiding descriptive details. This often is used with the topic of hookups due to societal stereotypes surrounding men and women. 3 is D. There's no correlation between academic success and sexual activity, while there is evidence that supports the rest of the claims listed. And number 4 is B. Societal pressures and stereotypes are the reason people use strategic ambiguity and are very impactful to the way people talk about sexual activity.
For our conclusion here, we got a quote from the article. It says, by keeping the definition of hookup ambiguous, women are able to protect their status as good girls. And then we get sexual but not promiscuous. And men are able to protect their social status as real men, heterosexual or sexually active. So to kind of explain that, using the ambiguous term hookup allows for no strings. So when people use the term, they often are looking for not a relationship and no emotional contact between the two partners. It's more about just getting the pleasure and leaving it kind of at that. Also for short and sweet, it kind of just keeps it's like a big umbrella for a bunch of terms, and it just kind of keeps it so it's not as harsh as using other terms, and makes it just more easier for people to explain what went down in a sexual interaction. And when they're doing this, each person can define as one sees fit. So it kind of goes back to that umbrella idea where it can mean a bunch of different things for other people. And so you kind of can just hide behind the strategic ambiguity of the term.
By defining it as one sees fit, both men and women can avoid the harsh terminology. For the women, it's things like slut, hoe, whore, and I guess more so for the men, it gains them like terminology, like such as like, oh, he's a player, or he's like that guy. And then for both men and women, it keeps a good self-image. For the men, it makes them seem manly, more of a real men. Just the fact that they've been with a bunch of different women. Then for the women, being able to like define it as you see fit can protect them from like social pressures and not feeling ashamed from what they've done.
All right, social media also affects hookups. It really downplays the part with our generation because many of us spend countless of hours browsing, commenting, and even texting on many social media apps and even our regular messengers. It's really impressive that within seconds we can find someone to immediately text and say, oh, do you want to come over, or let's go out and hang out. And that could always turn into hooking up, making out, having sex at the end of the day, and then forgetting about it like nothing really happened. Tinder is a really benefiting factor to social medias within people catfishing and, you know, not really having to express himself that much, so you don't get hooked on easily. It's a quick text message with, in just miles, people are ready to hook up and see each other. Within women, finding their place on social media, yes, commenting and harsh words will be said multiple times, and not having as much confidence to reveal themselves to other people. And a TV show is Euphoria, or your, I don't know how to pronounce it. There's one of the main characters, and she finds a way to actually earn money online and, you know, present herself sexually to, I don't want to say weird old men, but they are weird in the show. And I feel like that really does play a big part, because it came from someone trying to expose her of what they did sexually, which can also downgrade a woman's image as well. All right, after all, any conclusions and everything, is there any questions that you guys are wondering?